Welcome to our inaugural Cannabis Nurses Network member spotlight session, a brand new monthly series celebrating the incredible work of our members and aligning with CNN's 2025 monthly themes. This year, we proudly embrace the annual theme of honoring the past, leading the future. Together, we reflect on the groundbreaking achievements that have shaped cannabis nursing and looks ahead to the limitless possibilities awaiting us as leaders. This month, our focus is on new horizons in cannabis nursing, and we couldn't have asked for a more inspiring trailblazer to launch this series than Heather Shelton. Heather is not only a leader in cannabis nursing, but is also a pioneer in psilocybin facilitation. Based in Eugene, Oregon, she has made history by opening Epic, the first legal psilocybin clinic in the United States. Heather's innovative work bridges the worlds of cannabis and psychedelics. As we kick off this first of its kind series, you'll hear directly from Heather about her journey, the challenges she's overcome, and her vision for integrating these transformative therapies into mainstream care. This session sets the stage for a year of thought-provoking discussions, community engagement, member recognition, and professional growth as we honor our past accomplishments and continue to boldly lead the future of cannabis nursing. Thank you for joining us as we celebrate the remarkable achievements of Heather Shelton and explore the possibilities of new horizons in cannabis nursing. Let's dive in. Welcome, Heather. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see everyone.
You are such a trailblazer, Heather, and opening the first legal psilocybin clinic, Epic, is an incredible achievement. Can you share the vision and inspiration behind Epic and how your journey as a cannabis nurse prepared you for this groundbreaking step into psilocybin facilitation?
So it really actually began, the journey of cannabis is such an adventure, as probably everyone here knows. And Heather and I were actually just speaking about this before we got on the call, because something that I've just been contemplating and recognizing as all of the years of all of the projects and the opportunities I've had and all the times that I failed at those things, actually, I feel helped to prepare me to be here today. I've held many classes and lectures where no one came, or maybe I had one person come, which is great. And I had a class for one person and that was great, but it certainly wasn't the vision that I had when I announced I wanted to do that. And during the pandemic, I left nursing. Actually, I decided I was done with the system that really hadn't ever been supporting me. And although I can have a lot of appreciation for different aspects of medicine, I just knew it's not where my heart lies. So I left and I actually spent about 2 years trimming weed and healing, because I'd had so much trauma really from my career up till then. And another one of our CNN members, Jamie Rollins, was creating a ketamine company. I think she was the chief nursing officer and a couple other titles she had there. And so I got to participate in helping her, as maybe some of our other nurses in this group as well have participated in. And so that was kind of amazing and opened my mind, because I realized, wow, this is considered a legal psychedelic, right? And I was pretty excited about that because I've had a long personal history of psychedelic use. And it really did, in my younger years, impact who I am. It helped me become this person I am, really helped open me to awarenesses that I didn't have before. I came from an urban environment, a low-income urban environment, and I didn't know anything about food. Food is medicine, or that plants are medicine, or that we have a consciousness, or, no spirituality really practiced in my family. So psychedelics have been a really important part of my life. So I was excited to participate in the ketamine world. And I worked with KetaMD for a while, and then I learned about a therapist in town who was working with an anesthesiologist, and they had a very small ketamine practice. So I just sent them an email and said, hey, you didn't know you needed a nurse, but I'm a nurse and here's what I do. And I'm really inspired and I'd love to just talk with you. And so I went in for an interview or a meeting, and it was the first time I've ever been to a meeting where one of the questions was, tell us about your biggest psychedelic experience. So I felt really right away, I'm clearly in the right place, right? So I did join that team with Kathy and Dr. John, and we provided ketamine in person to people for about a year. I did that. And we also, because Kathy had already been trained also in psychedelic work, we really got to practice integration and preparation for our ketamine clients, which unfortunately isn't happening in a lot of ketamine centers. And so I just want to put that out there because people really need preparation and integration support with psychedelic work. That's definitely a place I see nurses making an impact. And so we ended up losing that doctor, and Kathy and I were just looking for a new doctor to work with, kind of talking about it would be so great to have a healing center, really starting to, our minds were churning, what could this look like? And then Measure 109 passed in Oregon, and we knew that legal psilocybin was an option. So Kathy applied to have a service center, and she actually did a little YouTube documentation of that whole process, which is cool. And that helped, that actually unknowingly helped kind of bring people to becoming aware of Epic. And we found out on May 1st of 2023 that we received the first license in the nation, which was kind of a wild ride. And suddenly the job of having a service center became a reality, and we had to work really hard to make it happen, and we have. So yeah, I don't even know if I answered the question,
No,
but
that was
that's
great.
a bit of my story.
You definitely answered the question perfectly. And you're such a groundbreaking, like a barrier buster, in what you're doing. It's just so exciting to hear all of your stories about that. And cannabis and psilocybin, I know you spoke about ketamine, but cannabis and psilocybin are both on the forefront of a new wave of holistic healing. And what parallels do you see between those two therapeutic tools, and how can they complement each other?
Sure. Yeah. And I'm even going to throw the little ketamine piece in there because for me, one of my challenges with ketamine is that it's synthetic. I'm really about, I'm a nature girl through and through. I wanted it to come from as close to the earth as possible. I eat my carrots straight out of the garden. I may wipe them off on my jeans, but dirt is actually good for you. So I do feel cannabis and psilocybin are much more aligned, absolutely. And they work, they have their own mechanisms of action, but always one of my favorite parts of cannabis has been its ability to give us a shift in perception, right? That's why I've always loved it for end of life care, not just for patients, but also for their family members. I mean, I've seen incredible transformations for people with just a couple puffs of cannabis, right? So we know this can happen. Psilocybin's a bit more intense, although, edible cannabis, as lots of you probably are aware, can create really wild experiences for people. And I do sometimes have folks come who are interested in psilocybin and say, well, I ate some edibles before and I had this really horrible time and I was paranoid for 6 hours and I'm just afraid that's what's going to happen. It's unlikely that's what's going to happen for people with psilocybin, especially when they are getting support from someone and they're kind of able to get prepared for what that might be. Most of the time when people get their socks knocked off by edibles, they also didn't have any preparation, right? So we prepare our clients if they're going to eat an edible, we give them information so they're ready for that. If somebody wants to use RSO or FICO, for example, we would never just give them the syringe and say, go for it, right? We would talk them through, here's some things to be aware of, here's how you might feel. So we do a lot of that also with psilocybin work, to prepare people for that change in consciousness. But I would say that's probably the biggest kind of overlap I see between the two. And that really, for me, at least in the practice that I use with all plants, is just helping humans to reconnect to the earth, because we are actually the living earth. We are each our expression of this planet that we live on. We're not separate from nature. And I just really feel that so many of our problems on the planet and with climate change and all these other things going on is because humanity has become disconnected from the earth, which is our mother. We are part of this planet. So I really, really love that aspect of both cannabis work and psilocybin work and on all our work with herbal medicine, is that, it really, I feel, can bring people back to that connection. And then we're not feeling so alone, So that's another way I see those two, cannabis and psilocybin working together.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And talk to us a little bit. Let's shift gears to talk a little bit about the nursing role, specifically in the psychedelic renaissance. Cannabis nursing is still growing as a specialty, and now we're adding psilocybin facilitation to the mix. How do you envision the role of nurses evolving as these therapies become more integrated into mainstream healthcare?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of important roles for nurses, and we are very well suited for supporting people with psychedelics. Most of us in our career have sat with people through uncomfortable feelings. We actually know how to sit and hold space for someone who's grieving deeply, or just living with intense fear, or contemplating the end of their life and how complicated that is. And so we already come with these skills that, I guess they're learning, they're things you can learn, but we kind of call them the intangibles. Like, these are life experiences that we have that we can bring to the table to better support people in whatever part of psychedelic work they want to do. So, as I spoke earlier, preparation and integration, to me, the integration piece is as important as the actual experience, right? And when we talk about integration, we say, well, that begins in preparation. So right off the bat, number one, I feel for clients, it's so important for them to trust their facilitator. You have to have a level of trust with the person who you're in the room with to really be able to do a deep internal dive, because we become vulnerable, right? And so we, as the most trusted profession, are already trusted by people. I know that I have clients who want to work with me because of my nursing background. That makes them feel safe. There's a safety that they can feel just based on those letters behind my name, which I will say that they have changed. I'm now a retired nurse rather than a registered nurse. So integration is where all of these things can come up in the experience, and the experience can be really big. And integration is where we actually take that experience and meld it into our lives. Like, what kind of change did psilocybin show us? How are we going to actually implement that in our lives? How do we want to take forward the gifts that we've discovered within ourselves or within the universe, depending on the experience we have, and then continue to live our life and live it in a little better way or more aligned? That's really what integration is about. And it takes a long time. It can take a long time. For some people, they can have an experience and really in maybe a few months just feel like, oh, I gleaned all the messages. I've made these beautiful changes in my life and they're on their way. And for some other folks, it can take a little bit longer. And having that extra support in place is where we see that people actually have the best long-term outcomes of really having transformation or healing in these psilocybin experiences. So you don't have to be a counselor. I think that being an active listener is almost the most important part, which we already all do again as nurses. This is what we do. Um, and then, in Colorado, so here in Oregon, we do not have a dual licensure program. And from the very outset, within our facilitator scope of practice, it's really clear that if you have another type of license, when you're working as a facilitator, you may not use that other license, right? So when I'm a facilitator, I'm not allowed to be using my nursing license. That felt really complicated to me because you just can't take the nurse out of the nurse. And I am going to always be assessing. And if I do think someone's having a medical emergency, I'm going to respond in the same way that I have always responded, which would be as a nurse. Um, so for me, that was a piece of why I decided to retire my license. I do know quite a few nurses, at least a dozen, that I know of personally, who are psilocybin facilitators in Oregon with their license, and they feel really comfortable with that. And I'm so glad. It's not the only reason I retired my license. There's a whole lot of other reasons too, but yeah, and then back to ketamine. I know that's a different drug, but I do also, there is a place for nurses there and they need us there. I mean, skill wise, we have the hands-on skills to be able to administer. And then again, just the awareness of how to hold space for someone in an altered consciousness. So I think that's just like part of what we have. That's part of what we do. So we're really well suited for this work.
That's wonderful. As nurses, we are basically experts in set and setting. And I know in the psychedelic world, set and setting is big. It's a big deal. So, we as nurses, like you said, come well equipped with some of these things. But just to kind of talk about the education and even like the advocacy part of this, as a thought leader in cannabis nursing and psilocybin facilitation, what educational initiatives or advocacy efforts do you believe are critical for nurses stepping into these emerging fields?
Well, I mean, right away, I think just becoming educated and being open, right? Because I am seeing that a lot more people are speaking to their providers about it or mentioning this is something I'd like to do. Certainly for us and in our regulations, if someone has a severe medical condition or cardiac background, they've had some cardiac event, then we're probably going to recommend they actually speak to their doctor. So I know that this conversation is coming up more, definitely in the fields of oncology. Doctors are much more aware now, and I think that's a really important place for nurses to just have the information to start. What is psilocybin? That's a really important thing to know. How can people access it? Where can they go right now? They could go to Oregon, they could go to Colorado. I mean, truly, you can go anywhere in the United States and access psilocybin, but not necessarily above ground. I've been doing a lot of education in other states because other states are interested in moving forward with psilocybin. So I met a couple times with the New Jersey Bar Association. It's just kind of random people who are trying to get that information. And what I keep seeing is I think we have to start with providers, to be honest, because I know for you in California, I think, Heather, you all had a ballot measure and I believe it was vetoed because it wasn't medical. Wasn't that an issue there in
They
California?
tabled it for a little while, so it didn't pass, but it's still
Yeah.
kind of there in the background.
Yeah. The more, I mean, we need that support always. People, of course, our legislators will listen to our medical professionals. We know that's still hard in cannabis, right? I just want to say that's not easy. I just honor all of you who are doing this work, who are educating providers and legislators and the community. That's another big piece is community education. They just did a poll here in Oregon, and 60% of people didn't know what psilocybin was. So we're the first state in the nation to have legal psilocybin services, and 60% of the people that they asked in Oregon didn't know what psilocybin was. So, we have a huge education deficit happening in this state, but in all of the states. So I think that's a really important role for all of us to play, whether you're educating your legislators or your medical providers or your team or yourself, really. And to learn, I think it's good to learn some of the basics of our different psychedelic or entheogenic options, which cannabis is one. I mean, we're already doing this, right? It's similar advocacy is what I see. We're kind of having some of those similar challenges. They're both Schedule I drugs. We know that there's research supporting their medicinal use. We know that they are not highly addictive. I mean, it's kind of this same thing when I do informed consent with my clients. I have to say, Schedule I drug according to the federal government. And then it goes to Part B, and this is all written by the state. And I say, I really like to draw your attention to Part B, which tells you all the reasons that it should not be a Schedule I drug at the federal level. And we talk about that. Yeah, and word of mouth, if you've had your own psychedelic experience and it's really made a difference for you, if you've worked with psilocybin, share that story if you feel comfortable. And of course, with discretion, right? We always want to use discretion, I think, talking about any topic. People feel differently about all kinds of things, but sharing our own healing stories is also really powerful for people. And that's what I see a lot happening with psilocybin. Of course, it has huge stigma, just like cannabis, almost worse, because if you do psilocybin, you might jump off the building and die, or, I mean, horrible, horrible stories. And the truth is that doesn't really happen. I mean, the vision that people have of what happens when you're high is very different than what's actually happening when people are high. But I do see, I love to work with medical providers, doctors and nurses and EMTs and whoever comes from our medical background who wants to work on healing. I'd love to support them, but it's so the best part is the end when they sit up and say, I think everyone should do this, or oh, I can't wait to go back and like share this, so that they're sharing with other doctors, they're sharing, sometimes talking to their patients. So now when their patients come in, there's a whole new conversation that can happen. So I've had a couple I have a couple of doctors now that I've networked with, and I'm hoping to do more on my own. Like, one of the things I'm hoping to do soon, if they want me to come, is I have a doctor who I've worked with two of his patients from the Mayo Clinic, and he's an oncologist. And so I am actually writing to him. It's on my list of my weekly things I'm doing this week, to see if I can fly out there and just give a presentation. If anybody's interested, if he's interested in me coming to do that and talk about what we do. And again, I could totally get shut down, because that's what happens. But if I don't ask, then I won't know. Yeah. So spreading the word, I think, is one of our best ways to advocate, sharing our own stories.
Wow, it's beautiful. And talking about stories, we definitely want to hear some of the stories. So, without breaking confidentiality, can you share a story or some moments from your work at Epic that illustrates the transformative potential of psilocybin and or cannabis care? What are some of those stories of major transformation that you've seen?
Yeah. Well, the one about cannabis that comes to my mind is when, Heather, you were there, and we offered a conscious cannabis class at a conference. And I loved that experience. I really want to offer that more and more now, because it was at 8:30 on a Sunday morning. So I thought, oh, only the stoners are going to come. We had a giant class, and most of those people didn't use cannabis. They hadn't in a really long time, or maybe they tried it once or twice. So it was really amazing to have that happen. And um, I had been a little bit ill, so I wasn't at my best game, I would say, in teaching that class. And I hadn't done it before, so we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. But we did a body scan. And then everybody took a puff. Everybody had kind of their option of what they wanted to try. And then we waited about 10 minutes. Then we did another body scan, and really just took the time to feel into ourselves. And how did it change? Did we notice any change? Did we notice any change in tension or the emotions that are coming up? And one of the participants, who also was a nurse, actually just came up and just sobbing and hugging, and she had just had a really powerful breakthrough for herself. Um, and 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 I was actually so amazed. I mean, I love that about cannabis, and I love the shift in perception, and that's kind of the goal is with this experience is to like experience what it feels like to have a shift in your consciousness where you're really preparing and you're aware. Um, it was powerful. That I felt that was really powerful and a special experience. Um, she really had a healing of something that she'd been carrying on to for a very long time in this hour-long class that we had. That really the cannabis experience had been very short, but we prepared for that. So I think she was able to maybe I don't know how it worked for her. I'm hopeful she just was ready to be open and vulnerable with herself, and it worked. Um, yeah, and my psilocybin work, I mean, I kind of feel like every day I see something amazing or something healing, or, people who come in just, they don't leave the same as they come in. Like folks will come in. Some people are really smiley when they come in and they're super excited. Um, but a lot of people come in and they're feeling really nervous. Or I did have a client come in his challenge was anxiety, pretty severe anxiety. So, I was already kind of wondering what the day would be like, if this was going to be a harder day or a busier day, I guess, in my role. And he came in and his hands, he was actually shaking like this when he came. And he was 10 minutes late and he had OCD. So before he even got there, I knew there was something going on. And I thought, well, I really want to make sure to let him know he doesn't have to do this if he doesn't want to do this. This is totally his decision. You can change your mind all the way up till the moment you put the mushrooms in your mouth, right? Um, and he came in and we sat down and we kind of talked through it. And he said, okay, I'm going to do it. And he was still really, really shaky. And we went for a little tour. So people will, we use this particular preparation method called lemon tech to prepare the mushrooms. And they have to sit for about 15 minutes. And then I like to give people a tour. And we always go outside and I offer everyone who comes a smudge. And so we went outside and I offered him a smudge and we did the smudge. And I just, you just can tell, we can feel people. And you can tell his eyes were just really wide and I could tell he wasn't calm. And I just said, may I give you a hug? And so we had a hug and we went inside and we talked about eye masks and all these other things and it was time to consume. And, we also always pause. Again, I ask for consent before we do this with anyone. I have learned now, but, we take a pause and then we offer up a blessing before the person consumes. And so we did that. And within 30 minutes, this poor fella who'd been like shaking when he came in just had the most beautiful, huge grin on his face. And he didn't want to put the eye mask on, which is fine. Nobody has to do it. There's no wrong way to do psilocybin. So they can do however they want. So he didn't want to put the eye mask on, but he probably spent 4 hours in this recliner telling me, he kept looking at me, go, oh my God. I mean, I can't believe I've been worrying about this stuff for my whole life. I have just never felt like this before. I have never felt this good before. I mean, I just let it all go for hours and hours. He was so amazed. He never felt like that before, or he couldn't remember feeling like that before. He's still doing great. This was, I don't even know, not quite a year ago, maybe 9 months ago. And it was such a transformation and it was this one experience. And maybe that will come, for some people, he might want to come back in another year, or maybe his symptoms, he'll start to feel them returning and he might want to come back again. But really, these experiences give us this opportunity to make change, and make change in how we're responding to things and how we're choosing to look at things. And I just really loved that session. It was a really sweet session. And I'll share another thing that came up in a different session that was it was a really powerful day for me because I also teach psilocybin facilitators. And I started doing that before there even was a legal facilitator, right? We had to teach ourselves to become this. And so And there weren't service centers, and so we were kind of teaching a little bit blind, kind of, because we didn't actually know what it was going to look like in Oregon. But so I teach there, and I've done a lot of studies, and I've done my own psychedelic work, and some of the things that we teach are about um, letting the participant have their experience. So not necessarily intervening. This is not a session where I'm actually doing a lot of interventions with people. If somebody's really needing support, that's what we're there for, but there's so much intuition that has to go into this work. I think I love that part too. So I teach, like, people will get through. We're like their thread that keeps them in place. So when I talk to my clients about what my role is as a facilitator, I feel my role is really similar to that as a midwife when I'm in session. I kind of make myself a little space in the corner. I'm a knitter, so I knit in session. And I let the client know I'm not going to be staring at you, but I'm going to be very in tune to your energy and what's happening in the room. Of course, the best way for me to know if you need help is for you to ask, right? But if I feel that you may need some help, I might just get up and come sit closer to you. You're going to know, even though you're highly under the influence, you're going to know that I actually got up and came and sat closer to you. I may ask if you want to hold hands, but I always ask before I touch anyone. Moving closer, if they were alert, I might ask if they wanted me to move closer. But if I really felt like they were struggling, and move closer. But I'm very hands off. I'm there. I'm so ready to support you 1,000% if anything comes up, but I'm very hands off because I actually have trust in the psilocybin and the individual, that this is their journey together, right? So I had a client come in. He's actually a physician, an older physician, and he took his mushrooms and he was just like feeling really nauseous. And so when people experience nausea, more than an hour after they've ingested the mushrooms, we know it's actually not related to ingestion and digesting the mushrooms. It's most likely that they're having some emotion that's been stirred up that's ready to be released. And so so purging is what we call that, right? Although everyone's mind goes to vomit, the vomiting is very rare. It's not the most common form of purging. Most common form of purging is tears and talking, I would say. Some people laugh, some people sing, some people need to move, and some people do throw up. So this fellow was just feeling so nauseous and kind of moaning. And I said, well, I just got up and I just moved closer to him. I didn't really say anything. And then he said, oh, I just feel so horrible. And I kind of reminded him. I said, there's likely something that wants to come out. I said, how about just making some noises into the bucket, because it doesn't have to be throw up. It can be noises. So he's kind of moaning in the bucket, spending a lot of time with the bucket. And I'm just sitting nearby and knitting and just being there. And at a point I realized the music, it was in like a minor chord or something. So clients pick their own music if they want. He was listening to some classical music and it was like very minor chords. And I just could feel how that minor chord, I think it's minor. I'm not a musician, but I think it was like a minor chord. And I could tell like this, I think if I change the music, it's just going to help. Like, this isn't uplifting. This is nausea music. And so I changed the music and I watched him just like it took about a few minutes, but he just like kind of calmed down and then suddenly like released the bucket. And he just sat there and I didn't say anything and I just kept knitting. And then he stared. He was very calm. And so we're like many hours into the trip. He's probably more kind of into the coming down phase. And he's just kind of staring off into space and doing his thing. And I moved back to my little corner that was farther away in the room and waited. And eventually he sits up and he looks at me and he said, thank you for changing the music. That really helped. And I was like, wow, that was amazing. And this was so powerful and it was so like affirming. He said, I was really struggling there. I didn't know if I was ever going to come back to reality, which of course I had no idea that's what he was experiencing. And he said, it was so great to just look at you over there. I could open my eye and see you knitting, and you were calm. And so I knew I was going to be okay. And then he thanked me for not helping him. It was amazing. Amazing. I mean, I just got chills saying that because um, that can be a really powerful part of these experiences, is like knowing I did that. And he brought him and he did it, right? And I knew he was going to be okay and that he was going to come back. And so I was able to be that thread, so that he's doing his journeying wherever he might be journeying, but there's this thread, and that was me just sitting there doing my knitting. And so it's just like such an honor to be that, to get to sit in that space and just and be and know that by doing that and like holding myself in a calm and connected way, I'm helping somebody else to do their work, because he's doing the work, I'm just the witness. So I probably didn't answer your question, Heather, but I don't
Oh, that was
know.
so beautiful, Heather. And, one of the things that I've heard repeatedly about psilocybin therapy and other psychedelics is there is no such thing as a bad trip, only a challenging experience. And what a gift you are to be able to sit there and say, this may be challenging, but I trust that the medicine and you and your spirit, that you will make this through and get what you need out of it. So,
Yeah.
it's
And if he had said something to me that, if he had said anything that would have led me to believe he wanted me to help him, I would have jumped up to do that, but yeah, that was amazing and felt really special. I mean, I feel like each time is very special, in each person, and I get to know people in this really intimate way that we also get to do as nurses. But it's deeper or something. I don't know. It's different, but I love the intimacy with people. I get on my preparation calls with a lot of people and they start talking and they say, yeah, I've never told anyone this before. And then unload a whole lot of things that's on their mind, which is really important, because what psilocybin often does is bring up the elephant in the room, or the elephant that we're holding inside. What is that thing? People don't have to share their reasons for wanting to come for a session with me, but I do find it helps me if I kind of know what it is they're wanting to work on, so that when things come up, I'm able to share with them about it. And I find most people are pretty open.
Yeah, and as nurses, sometimes we tend to want to be able to be the ones that are there to help, and that's kind of in our nature. And so it's really lovely that you're able to sit and hold space and be that sound person in the room. Um, just talking about navigating challenges, you know, as a pioneer in this space, you've likely experienced lots of challenges, regulatory challenges, societal challenges, personal challenges, and hurdles. What has been the most significant challenge in establishing Epic, and how did you overcome
Wow.
that challenge?
Um, have been a lot of significant challenges. One is, I'm going to say that I'm not a really, well, I don't want to say it that way. Um, Running a business doesn't come naturally to me, is what I'll say. Nor to my partner, Kathy. And so, here we are, these big open-hearted women on a mission, um, having to figure out all of those like linear important numbers and things like that. So that was a big challenge. I've learned so much. I still feel like I'm kind of a ding dong in the world of technology, but my skills have improved immensely compared to where they were. So we did eventually, pretty early on, find a person who could help us with all of that. He's now our COO, but he thankfully could come in and help us like run, you know, create our online things we needed to do and all of that, and help us figure out accountants and attorneys. And, of course, just like cannabis, which is a Schedule I drug, when you work with psilocybin, you also can't have banking. So that was a challenge we had to overcome. How do we actually run a business on with cash? I mean, we, you know, I couldn't even really imagine how that would work and dealing with money and all of that. But I will share what we ended up doing is that we actually have two companies, so that when someone signs up for services, we can actually charge for the facilitation services, doing online business, because most of our clients come from out of town and we like to have a deposit to know that they're going to come. So that's been really helpful. So now we have two businesses and we've kind of figured that out. When people come, then they purchase the psilocybin in cash. So that was a big thing to figure out. A bigger thing that was an emotional component, and how we both actually had to really do some personal growth work, was about haters. You know, because we were the first in the nation, we had an incredible amount of media attention, which was cool and also brought a lot of meanness as well. So that was hard. That was hard to every day get an email or multiple emails from people telling us that we're like horrible capitalists and we don't care about healing and we're just here to rip people off. And, you know, and a lot of folks who actually are mushroom users, because, and you could tell by the email, you know, because they'd say, well, you could buy a bag for $45 and eat mushrooms with your friends. Why do you have to charge $2,000? And, you know, just a lot of, I mean, even from other nurses, I'm sad to say that I went into a Facebook group that I've been a part of for quite some time to see like nasty threads about Epic, which was me. And I did speak up for myself, and thankfully I had other friends speak up for us as well, because there's, you know, I would love to be able to offer this for close to free or whatever, but it's just not realistic if we're going to be doing this in a legal setting. And to be honest, people are, you know, really, we've looked at cost comparisons for how much, you know, actual psychotherapy costs and pharmaceuticals cost and just mental health costs for someone for a full year versus the cost of psychedelics. And it's, I mean, you know, there's no, it's so unequal. The psychedelic therapy is much more affordable. It just all kind of has to get paid for at once, which is a challenge for people. And I hope that changes. I know that there are already a lot of people getting involved and we're trying to gather information so that we can share this information. So maybe someday psychedelics or psilocybin therapy can get covered by insurance. I mean, I have a whole different thought about insurance. Like, yeah. So anyway, I'm really feeling like, let's just go back to the patient-doctor relationship and the nurse there who helps. And what are we doing with all these middlemen? But we have those middlemen. So we are hoping that those middlemen might want to pay for psilocybin therapy for people someday in the future too. So we're gathering information for that as well. But yeah, the hater part was hard. We still have that occasionally. I feel we're much less affected by it now. And Kathy and I don't know if any of you have ever been to our website, but it's epichealingeugene.com. And Kathy and I, we do all these little YouTube videos, and they're so fun. We have such a good time, and I'm really grateful for all the people, all of our clients really, who give us this positive feedback, because if I had only been doing that and getting all of this hate mail that we get, I don't know how long I could have done it. But now, because we do have amazing clients and we have people who are supporting us, family members of clients who want to learn more, or just, you know, they're kind because they see that it's making a difference. So that was one of the harder parts. Which is always a hard, I mean, with cannabis too, for some of you who live in states where you can't talk about it. I mean, you know, it's hard to have, for our path and our passion to be something where we have to self-censor. I mean, that's another thing. I just turned 50 and I'm over self-censoring. So get ready. But I actually don't have to do that anymore, y'all. I am not a criminal. I live in a state and I'm not a criminal, and it's just amazing to not be a criminal. I mean, I was really not a criminal because we decriminalized all drugs for a short period of time. They actually took that law away, and so can get misdemeanors and whatnot for having illegal substances. But overall, I feel like I'm not a criminal anymore, and I get to talk about it. And in fact, I have to talk about it because I'm a leader. And so there's just that feels really satisfying.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so awesome. And just for laughs, you know, cannabis and psilocybin are they both have their own unique reputations, as you just alluded to. Have you ever encountered like a particularly amusing or unexpected reaction when you tell somebody that you're a cannabis nurse and a psilocybin facilitator?
I mean, I just get a lot of um, kind of confused stares like that's a whole people have to process that. What is that? And the psilocybin piece, like I said, people don't even know what that is. I mean, I've been going to the same post office for years and I mail a lot of herbal things. And so I know this guy, his name's Don. He's this very jolly fellow with a bald head and a big beard. And he was a retired Coast Guard fellow. And I actually told him today what I did for a living. So I'm still not sure how he feels about it. He was very nice though, and I'm checking out. And I said, "Yeah, it's like pretty cool. I get to do work that feels really good. I like feel really satisfied with my work." And he goes, "Yeah, I don't know about that psilocybin. I think I'm going to stick to heroin for now." I was like, "Oh," and so I'm not sure. Like that was such a different response. I don't know what he thinks about what I do, but and he's of course kidding. He's a beautiful, healthy man. He's not
Yeah.
doing it, but yeah. So I don't know if he's someone who's thinking like psilocybin is like heroin and should be not is not okay, or if he was just kind of cracking a joke and it's all good, or so yeah, I kind of don't know what people are going to say. And when I really leave the state, then it's almost hard to talk about because it's really not a common conversation in other parts of the country.
Not quite yet a reality for some of us nurses in other states. And so, what a
Mhm.
gift to have you here sharing your insights with us. And we've got about 10 minutes here. I want to open up the floor. We've got some amazing people who have joined us today. And if you all have any questions or would like to get off mute and just dive into some discussion with Heather, please feel free to do so.
Yeah. I also saw a question in here too. What type of mushroom are you using? So we use all, they have to be psilocybe cubensis. That's a state regulation, but within that, there's of course, just like cannabis, all cannabis is cannabis sativa L, right? But there's all these different varieties. And so we have that also in mushroom land, which that was something new for me to learn about. And, we have to do research and development sometimes, which can you believe I have to eat mushrooms for work? I just can't. I just like have to say that I just encourage everyone if you're like not feeling satisfied with what you're doing in your life, just keep pushing forward and like don't even limit yourself into what it could possibly be that you're doing because 3 years ago I didn't even know this was possible, and here I am now 3 years later, just like having this work that feels so good to do and that I'm really happy in my career. And it's been a long time since I've had that. And so if I had tried to like envision this, I couldn't have. It wasn't even a thing. So just know that like there's so much, everything is possible, is what I'll say. So just keep plugging along and following your heart. But
Yes.
anyway, that went from what type of
Marilyn.
mushroom are you using to that. Hi, Marilyn.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your amazingly, you're such a pioneer and so courageous in moving forward. And thank you for sharing the journey because it shows that it's not like you had this planned or you thought of it. You just kept taking the next step. And I think that that's really significant in a cannabis or a psilocybin journey is we can't always know the path. So just keep taking steps, keep going forward. But my question is kind of a moral one. What do you believe that in order to facilitate people, that the nurse themselves needs to have the experience as well?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even because if you think being a cannabis nurse, we want to try. I mean, so as nurses, we actually are not trained to try the medicine we're giving people, right? And so it's a whole different paradigm. And cannabis shows us that, right? Because really, to be the best cannabis nurse, I think you actually have to use cannabis. And maybe you don't use it every day, although some of us do, but it's important to know what it feels like to feel high if you're going to sit with someone and help them be high for their medicine. So, um, it's part of why I love being an herbalist. I've tried every herb that I've ever given to someone else, but we never get to do that as a nurse. I'm not going to take metoprolol if I don't need it, right? But I do think in this particular field, and maybe all plant medicine, really, we should be trying those plants ourselves before we give them to others. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Oh, thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Heather?
This is Cindy. I have a question for you, and thank you so much, both to you and both Heathers, for putting this on. It's very enlightening to me. One of the questions I had was typically how long does a session last, or how long is the duration of the medication? I would call it the herbal med.
Well, it depends on the dose. Well, it sounded like you have something else, Cynthia, to add.
Well, I was going to say, and Heather probably knows this from when we met for breakfast back in Tucson. I, grew up in the 60s and 70s. I smoked cannabis all the time. I also ate it, put it in brownies and other things I could figure out. And then I became an EMT prior to becoming an RN. And I was like, oh, I can't have any of that. I'll lose my license. And so it wasn't until maybe in the last 7 years, and I'm 65 now, that I started using cannabis again, and using it medicinally, knowing that, I know this works for me and how it works for me. So it's been a long time since I did mushrooms as well. That's going back to the 60s, or the 70s. I didn't do it when I was 10, but 14, 15, yes. So I forget, what is the duration of this? How do you do a dosing on a mushroom? I remember being handed a mushroom and just ate it.
Yeah. That's how most of us have done them. Now we're lucky to have actually lab testing, so we know the dosing of psilocybin annually that clients are getting in the mushrooms that they're having. I really love that, and partially because now I kind of have a better idea of what to expect. Like back to the varietals. So some varietals will have 5 milligrams of psilocybin per gram of mushroom, and others will have 20 milligrams of psilocybin per mushroom. So if you eat 2 grams of those mushrooms, those are very different experiences, right? And that's how most of us have done it in the past. You kind of just, okay, here we go. We're going to see what happens. We don't know how high we're going to get. So now, because of this lab testing, like we have a better idea. I really appreciate that for my own self, of now I can actually kind of navigate how much mushroom I'm going to get. And so the regulations here and what we see is it's really based on dose, Cynthia. So I don't know how to actually put that into grams, but most people come to the service center at 9. Most people have consumed by 10. And folks are really kind of come down and ready to just start talking about the day and get ready to go home probably around 3:30-ish. So anywhere from like 4 to 6 hours, depending on the dose. And of course, there's like kind of the climbing up part and then the coming down part. Coming down is probably an hour and a half for people. And I actually think that's still really valuable time. And I encourage people to put their eye masks on and just soak it up for that last hour and a half. It's when our bodies are really relaxed and the experience is a little bit slower. So it's a opportunity to really start making meaning of the experience. But people are heavily under the influence for probably a good 4 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. And I know like there's some people like me, any medication just I seem to, I don't want to say overreact to, but even antibiotics, I'll take like a pediatric dose. I've been self-dosing myself with things forever. So it's just interesting to know because obviously I would want to try this myself before I ever thought about, ever consulting. Obviously, there's a lot more education than just taking it myself, but I was just curious.
I would say just like I would say somebody who's trying cannabis on their own is also just start low and go slow.
Right.
And if you have your first mushroom trip that you try with a gram of mushrooms, see how that lands for you, and then use the same mushrooms if you're going to try it again. If you're really trying to figure out like your dose and what works for you, I would try to use the same variety of mushrooms because that will just give you more information.
Thank you. This was very educational. I appreciate it.
And speaking of education, Trisha has made a comment that she paid for a program in psychedelics and was declined for their certification course. And she said it seems like some programs out there are not really taking nurses into the field. Keep that in mind with
What?
coupling up. We've got a comment from Tanya that says she's very passionate about pursuing this and would love to know where to get these courses and certifications and extra schooling to proceed forward with this. So do you have any comments on where people can go to get education, certification, and how that works?
Yeah, so well, there's not really certifications except in Oregon where you can get your facilitator license, and now in Colorado. And Colorado's is going to be more friendly to folks with other licenses. They actually have a program set up for dual licensure. I'm not totally up to speed on Colorado, although I might try to get my license there too.
I will mention that RNs are not included on the list of
in Colorado, really? Oh, so bad.
So we have a lot of advocacy to do as nurses because we are experts in set and setting. We are trained critical thinkers. We are the ones that are perfect for this role, and we are being left out, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, I was just kind of curious about the program, Trisha.
I think it's a 10 to 12-month program that does provide certification as well, but I had to answer 20 questions very thoroughly. They reviewed it, and I had an interview set up next Thursday, and then I saw that they commented, and I was declined because I didn't have the right accreditations. I'm not a psychologist, a social worker, and like you guys said, it's like we're in a perfect position to do this because there could be some physical things that happen too, and obviously set and setting, we know how to do that and be active listeners. So I'm disappointed, but I am taking a 3-module class through them anyway. It doesn't provide a certification, but a good background or a good start to psilocybin anyway.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm very sad to hear that.
It's disappointing. Yeah.
Wow. Hi, Neek.
Nice to see you, Heather. It's been a long time. You're doing some really cool stuff out there.
You are too, my friend.
Well, I just found it interesting. I'm at work, so I had to kind of multitask while I was listening, but I didn't want to miss this. And the ketamine piece is very interesting because I started working in the ECT lab here, and we do TMS and ketamine, and we do nasal ketamine, and I'm waiting to get trained to cover the ketamine clinic. And it's very interesting because all the nurse does is give it to the patient, and it's nasal administration.
Mm-hmm.
And they leave them alone. They leave them alone to dose. They sit outside the room. I'm like, that's all you do? They're like, yeah, it's pretty boring. We don't do much of anything. And then when they're done, they come out. And I'm like, does anybody talk to them? Does anybody say anything to them? No, they just come in and they leave. I'm like, oh my God. And I think about myself, and I think about cannabis and other things that I've tried and what they've done to me. And I'm like, oh my God, if I was in there by myself, like, they'd probably send me over to the inpatient psych stay or something like that. I'd be like a direct admit or something, or at least that's how I feel because of the responses I've had to cannabis and some other things. So I just thought, like, how sad. Like, we're using this alternative medicine, and all you care about is once they're done, let me go to the computer and bill their insurance company. Like,
Yeah.
it's just so sad. Just so sad. So I'm treading lightly, but as we start to do more work here with psilocybin at the research center, and once we start getting our THC research studies back up and running again, then, maybe I can sit at the table and just say, can't we do something a little bit more with this than just be so, like, don't you want to see like really good benefits? Wouldn't you want to be, in the cutting edge and top in the country? Like, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just mind blowing as, a patient and a nurse to like see the way they do things. So thank you, Heather. Very, very interesting. And who knows, I might be calling you to set up a Zoom call with some of the docs down here in these clinics.
Well, yeah, and I mean, you brought up such a great point, and I think that's where we're falling short in the world of ketamine therapy, is that we just are, what happens. That's what happens in IV clinics too. They set somebody up with their IV ketamine and then leave. And I don't know if any of you have had ketamine, but it's a dissociative. It actually like kind of moves you out of your body, and it's very hard for people to call you if they want help, actually, depending on their dose, right? And we're kind of missing the point, but it's fairy medicine, isn't it? This is how medicine works. Oh, we have this drug, it's going to fix your brain. So let's set you up with your IV. Now you're having your drug and we'll come help you when you're done. So they're kind of missing the point, I think. I mean, yes,
missing an opportunity.
it's
What
a
an
Right.
opportunity.
huge opportunity for healing for that client, for everyone who works for them, right?
And
Um,
it's almost like, I mean, I've been a psych nurse for a long time, and it's almost like that boundary thing, oh, you're here for psych, so therefore it's an untouchable, and you stay there and I'll stay here, and you know what I mean? But if I was going in there for cancer, my provider, my nurse might give me a hug if I was having a tough day getting ready for my chemo. But psych is just such this, like, let me put this wall up because, oh, I'm the nurse or I'm the psychiatrist. It's like, it's just so like white jacket. It's so different. Like, I'm so grateful that I started with the network so long ago and have met such incredible people like you that have helped teach me and such. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you're doing.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, and that's an opportunity you just brought up for everyone here too. It's just that providing the care, right? That's what's missing from that ketamine clinic is where's the care for the human being? Because the first best way to healing is to be listened to and to really be heard. And so we're just actually taking that opportunity away from these patients every time they are left in the room alone, or so even like thinking about small changes, like, okay, well, after that maybe they have 15 minutes with the nurse, or as the nurse you just move really, really slow so that you have 15 minutes with that client or patient to ask them, how was that? Did anything come up for you that felt really big?
It's
You know,
almost like they should be doing a questionnaire, you
yeah.
know, like
But I
even,
think a human questionnaire is the caring
right,
question.
right. But I mean, everybody looks at it differently. So, I mean, if there was just some kind of, it's kind of like when you do an admission. Once you do it enough times, you don't have to bring the computer in with you. You know what questions to ask.
Right.
So that's what I meant in this hospital type setting. So
Yeah.
that way the nurses have this like little pocket of questions to do this assessment at the end that they could, kind of add some closure to what just happened. But then I
Yeah.
guess they figure out, well, we give you Zyprexa and you're not telling me what kind of experiences you have when I give you your Zyprexa. I don't know. It's just very cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
Meg, I see your hand is up. A question for
Oh
Heather?
yeah, just going back to the ketamine thing, there are a couple things that, just kind of occurred to me. I realized that there is a lot of this just leaving the person in the room, whether it's Spiriva or whether it's an IV infusion. And what I've learned is that part of the reason why they don't have CRNAs or nurses in the room is because that can be construed as psychedelic assisted therapy or ketamine assisted therapy. And if you're not a therapist, then the mere fact that you're in the room could could be evidence of the fact that you're doing therapy. And that's one of the reasons why, as I understand it, why there's nobody in the room unless you pay for the additional therapist to sit with you during the infusion or during the dosing of Spiriva. And the Spiriva is such a small dose that I can understand why you might not need to be sitting with that person or maybe until they're done, and then you could have a conversation. But unless you get into trouble and you call somebody, like you said, if you're capable of calling somebody,
Mhm.
you're there alone, which can be okay or not. But it really depends on what the person's after, right? What they're looking for. And I'm so appreciative of everything that you're doing. I totally agree with the healing power and it's the plant and the conversation, I think, that are the healing part, not just and the coaching with integration. It's not just the dosing and sending somebody on their way.
Yeah.
I think in some ways that can be more harmful than helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. And we love the integration. I mean, I think nurses love the integration already, even if we don't use that word in what we do. We want it when
Yeah,
we
that's the
care.
fun part.
Yeah, like how was that cannabis experience for you? How's it going with your new one-to-one product? Are you feeling kind of high? Are you getting better sleep? I mean, we're assessing. We want to know like how are people feeling and I just feel like I get to do that in a deeper, more meaningful way now.
Yeah, and to be able to incorporate coaching, I think is really helpful too. I mean, that's the part that I do and I like the most, is actually helping coach somebody
Yeah.
for
Well, and here in Oregon,
integration in mind.
we have to use a non-directive approach. So what you were saying about having someone in the room with the ketamine and that might be considered psychedelic therapy, here, we are non-clinical and non-medical. So to be very careful, it's part of why it's really great I don't have a nursing license, because I can't lose it now. So awesome. So we have to be non-medical, non-clinical. And so it's been an interesting dance to kind of learn how to do that, because I'm a nurse and I have all the, but where I find it's most important is actually in the session. I mean, before the session, it is my job to educate them. That's what we're here for preparation for, to maybe like help somebody. I mean, one of my favorite activities, and we could do this to end whenever we get there. And I'm not in a hurry, but I really teach my clients about a gratitude practice, and we do it together, and we just take that moment to do that together. And for some people, that's brand new. They've never put their hand here and had to focus on this part of their body, So I don't think that's therapy. I think that's just me offering them a gift that they can do to them for themselves whenever they want, And then afterwards, the same thing. I ask a lot of, and this is something I'm still working on. I want to be a really great integration support. And so I'm still working on, finding the right questions that really encourage self-inquiry, and finding that balance between sharing and offering tools, and then helping them find they already have their own tools. What are your own tools? So so I'm still learning that. I mean, that'll probably take me a lifetime to learn or feel really good about but yeah, in the session, we are very careful to not be offering any therapy or no guided sessions. That's what we say, non-directive approach.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Heather. And we really value your time. We've gone over a little bit. Sue, I see your hand is up. We'll take Sue's question and then we'll wrap up here.
Hi, Heather, and thank you so much for what you've shared. You know, I did take a course last year, and it was a combination of nurses and therapists. I thought I was really going to learn, you know, something new, just because, you know, I'm older and I've been through the psychedelic world and what have you. But what was interesting, and I don't really want to say, you know, that I didn't get anything out of it, because I did. What I got to listen to was just exactly what a therapist does, and you know, the whole facilitation, the amount of information they require, what they look at and what they don't look at, and what we look at, you know, and then stepping back, being the nurse and saying, okay, well, you know, of course I didn't share what I was thinking in my head, but this is what I would do, or I would say, or I would be looking at, or I would be checking for. So if anybody gets an opportunity to take one of those integrated programs, it's good, because you do get something from it, you know, and even if it's minimal, even if it's just, okay, this is what I would want to bring to a client that was going to journey, you know, and how I'd want that to fit in as being a nurse. But again, with this program, therapists, you know, they had a lot more freedom with what they could share and what they could talk about, where we were more of the underground, you know, we were the dark web. But it was interesting, to say the least. And for anybody that really wants to learn about psychedelics, any of these programs you can learn something from. And there are people like you that would love to share what their experience is. But yeah, you do have a lot more freedoms as a therapist than as a nurse. So I understand you giving up your license. And I like what you said, RN, retired nurse. I like that.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Can I give a quick little plug for something that I'm working on, Heather? Okay.
Please do.
So I'm really excited because this year, so we just announced we're going to do our first retreat for healthcare professionals. So healthcare professionals, mental health professionals, and helpers, because, right, there's a lot of people doing good helping work in the world who might not have an active license or something. So we're going to do that coming up in May. And then I am doing my own personal, I feel like I've been working on this for long. Things have led me to this, but I'm going to be offering a nature immersion with psilocybin. And so it'll be like a 3-day experience, and the first day and the last day are in my garden. And we're going to focus on like plant communication and do some forest bathing activities, and some just really kind of, because I really believe we need to come back to the earth. So I'm excited about that. And then that middle day will be like a high dose psilocybin experience at the service center. And those are going to be really small, like groups of 2 or 3 people. But I'm hoping that's going to turn out well. And it feels like for me, it's kind of getting to bring all these pieces together, because I love all the plants. And so we can like spend time with yarrow and dandelion and roses and psilocybin and cannabis if people are open. I mean, I'll be growing cannabis in my garden, so it will be part of our garden experience. So that's what I'm working on next, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's going to happen in 2025.
Sounds fantastic.
Yes, we're so excited for you, Heather, and thank you for letting us know. Feel free to put that information in the chat if you would like, for the retreat, and of course on the network. And as we come to a close of this inspiring session, we want to extend our deepest gratitude to Heather Shelton for sharing her remarkable journey and invaluable insights with us today. Heather, your pioneering work in cannabis nursing and psilocybin facilitation is a testament to the courage, innovation, and compassion that defines our profession. I'm going to cry. Your contributions remind us all of the boundless potential for nurses to lead the way in holistic and transcendent care. This inaugural Cannabis Nurses Network member spotlight has set the tone for what we hope will be a year of inspiration, collaboration, and growth as we honor our collective past and lead the future. Heather's work at Epic embodies this year's CNN theme, honoring the past, leading the future, while perfectly illustrating this month's focus on new horizons in cannabis nursing. To all of our attendees, thank you for joining us today and for being part of this vibrant and forward-thinking community. We encourage you to carry the ideas and lessons from today's session into your own practice, advocacy, and education. Together, we are shaping the future of nursing and making holistic care a reality for all. We hope to see you next month for our next Members Spotlight session, and we will continue to highlight the incredible contributions of our CNN members and explore new themes in 2025. Until then, stay inspired, stay connected, and keep leading the way. Thank you all, and take care.
Thank you, Heather.
We appreciate you.
Thank
Thank you for staying extra long, Heather. We appreciate it.
I loved it. It's such an honor to be here. I love CNN and all my friends that I've made there. Thank you all for being an important part of my journey.